6:04, Talk 107.3 FM at WBRP. Mornings with Brian Haldane off and running. Brian here with you, yes, back in the saddle for 2025. John LaBeouf producing. Good morning, everybody. We're starting off your Thursday at 40 degrees in downtown Baton Rouge. It is Thursday, right? I want to make sure. I want to make sure I have that right after taking the last a little more than a week off.
Yeah,
you get lost in that holiday, Christmas to New Year's. What day is today? We got a very, very busy show, but I do want to, before even getting started, thank Dixon McMakin, thank David St. Remain, thank Haggai Davis for popping in, filling in, and holding it down. And, of course, thank you, John, for holding it down as well, as took some much-needed rest, much-needed time off. But we're back at it. There's a lot going on, so let's waste absolutely no time. Let's get right to top stories and trending.
Number 5.
Well, this could be our top story throughout the morning. It's going to be a repeated story throughout the morning. That is, of course, the NOLA attack. Members of Louisiana's congressional delegation declaring yesterday that law officers would track down anyone who helped stage an overnight attack targeting New Year's Eve revelers on Bourbon Street. According to police, Shamsuddin Jabbar, 42 years old of Texas, drove a rented pickup truck past a police car blocking Bourbon Street at its intersection with Canal and sped into the French Quarter, eventually killing 15 people, injuring 35 more. Investigators do not believe that Jabbar acted alone. The Associated Press reported yesterday that investigators had seen video showing 3 men and a woman placing an improvised explosive device believed to be part of the car attack. AP cited a Louisiana State Police bulletin the news agency had obtained. I can tell you, we're going to hear from the FBI from yesterday's press conference. We're going to hear from Governor Landry from yesterday's press conference. I can tell you right now that while I've had numerous conversations yesterday, neither the FBI nor the governor are going to be doing any public interviews throughout the day today as this investigation wears on. We will stay in contact with them to be sure, but we won't be able to hear from them on the air in a one-on-one interview. That being said, though, the information is still coming in fast and furious and will likely continue to do so.
Number 4.
With the new year comes some flexibility for insurance companies, making it more palatable for them to do business here in Louisiana. As of Wednesday, the 3-year rule is no longer a thing in the state. This was the rule that said insurance companies could not cancel nor or non-renew any policy that had been in effect for more than 3 years. Also, insurance companies have more flexibility now with raising deductibles.
Number 3.
And insurance companies aren't the only ones who will benefit with new laws kicking in. As of yesterday, our income tax dropped down to 3%, and dozens of laws hitting everything from child support to seafood safety went into effect as well.
Number 2.
2 people are dead after 2 separate shootings in Baton Rouge on New Year's Eve. 44-year-old William Bradford was shot at 425 on O'Neill Lane near I-12 exit, brought to the hospital where he died from his injuries. In another incident, 31-year-old James Weber was shot and killed on Greenwell Springs Road at 8:27 p.m. 3 suspects were seen fleeing the scene in a black vehicle in that incident.
Number 1.
And 2025 already has its first homicide in Baton Rouge. 1 person is dead after a shooting on Longfellow Drive and Hollywood Street, according to the Baton Rouge Police Department. Officers say the shooting happened around 3:24 p.m. Terry Wayne Jones, 35 years old, was found with multiple gunshot wounds. He died on the scene. This is an ongoing investigation. Anyone with information is asked to call Crimestoppers at 344-STOP. What's trending there, John?
Well, of course, the terror attack in New Orleans is the biggest story today, both locally and nationally. Just devastating.
It really is. And, I mean, some of these deaths hit home. We're learning more and more about who some of the victims are.
Some of them Baton Rouge natives, yeah.
Yeah, Baton Rouge native and one from Lafayette who has ties to this building in Tiger Besh. As we learn more, we'll have it all for you. I think right now is kind of on the investigative part of this, and it's always impossible to comprehend it as it's happening.
Right.
But when you start to see other things involved, like postponing the Sugar Bowl and then detonating explosive devices around the quarter It opens up to so many more questions.
It does.
Which, by the way, let me go ahead and just tease this right now. 7:55 this morning, ABC News' Jim Ryan's going to join us to talk about it. 8:35 this morning, our terror expert Paul Viollis is going to join us there.
Yes. Heading into the new year, Congressman Mike Johnson got the endorsement of President-elect Donald Trump to retain his post as Speaker of the House.
100%.
So yeah,
That's good. I mean,
Yeah.
that's one way to start the year.
Indeed.
And man, it's going to be a contentious year for Mike Johnson. I don't know if he's going to go a whole year as Speaker because that's going to wear him down, but he will definitely start in the right direction.
Oh yeah, definitely. We'll see. Meanwhile, over in Las Vegas, a Tesla Cybertruck exploded at the front doors of the Trump International Hotel yesterday.
Now,
That footage is insane.
yes, and FBI has been looking for any connection at all between that and New Orleans,
Yeah.
and they found it. There's we don't know if
There
it's
is.
a connection or just a coincidental similarity.
Oh.
But both suspects are American-born former military.
So these
Both fought in Afghanistan.
are domestic terrorists that we're looking at, even with New Orleans.
Terrorism
everything.
is terrorism,
I mean,
but yes. Yeah,
Insane.
yeah, absolutely.
You're just at a loss for words of it. I mean, this is these past few days have just been it's unbelievable.
I know. It is coming up on, well, we're right at 6:11 at Talk 107.3 FM. We're going to be due up for our first break here in just a second. Let me go ahead and give you the full guest list for this morning. We'll have Haggai Davis in for a cup of tech gumbo. I was texting back and forth with Haggai yesterday. I said, we kind of need to talk about what kind of tech goes into searching for explosive devices. And he was like, dude, it's actually very low tech. So that's going to be part of the conversation in a cup of tech gumbo. Also, the potential TikTok ban for this year. We'll talk about that in a cup of tech gumbo as well. 7 o'clock hour, we got Tommy Faucheaux from the Louisiana Mid-Continent Oil and Gas Association slated to join us. He's got a busy 2025 to look forward to. We will break that down. Lieutenant Don Coppola going to be coming by for Crimestoppers at 7:35. I can't picture a better guest to talk to about when you have an investigation into a terror attack, what goes into if you see something, say something. Think about the number of eyes, ears, cameras on the French Quarter and the surrounding area in New Orleans and how many pieces of the puzzle can be put together. Sure, we'll try and catch some bad guys, some local fugitives as well. But Don Coppola going to be in for Crimestoppers at 7:35. Like I said, 7:55. ABC News' Jim Ryan going to join us to talk about the attack down in New Orleans. 8 o'clock hour, 8:15. Sid Edwards, about to no longer be mayor president-elect, about to be mayor president Sid Edwards. He's going to join us at 8:15. And then, like I said, Paul Viollis going to join us at 8:35 to talk about the terror attack down in New Orleans. That is your guest list. We are due up for a break. We're coming up on 6:13 to Talk 107.3 FM. After yesterday morning's attacks, it feels like LSU football was a million years ago, but we'll have some highlights from that and talk about the Sugar Bowl as well. That's coming up next on Talk 107.3. My pencil disappeared. Ugh. Good morning to the crew in the chat. How y'all doing this start off your 2025? Byron says, welcome back. Side note, Haggai is a great fill-in host. Well, that's why I go to him. Duh.
Yeah.
I'm just glad to see Byron in there to start off the morning because I play words with friends with him and I dropped like 100-point word on him. But he had beaten me like 8 times in a row, so.
Nice. So
yeah.
It's a good team sport. Good
It's,
team
I can tell y'all this was not the show that I had planned. Coming back in this morning. Okay, first of all, I won the Dave Ramsey Fantasy Football League. So Ramsey affiliates around the country can suck it. You bow to my greatness in fantasy football. All right, that's number one. Number two, I had a bit mapped out about New Year's resolutions. It's kind of a tired bit. We do it all the time. But I wanted to do what's in, what's out for 2025. Like, I want to get rid of the term gaslighting. I think it's overused. Yeah. I'm like, that's, but I had all this shit mapped out, right? Ready to roll. And then, of course, news takes over and tragedy takes over. So, oh.
Indeed. Man.
617 Talk 107.3 FM WBRP mornings with Brian Haldane rolling right along. It is sports time, and yeah, it does feel weird, right? It does feel weird talking about sports after yesterday where we saw a bowl game, a college football playoff game, get postponed due to this terror attack down in New Orleans, and then sit there watching football all day long, like watching Arizona State and Texas do battle yesterday, which, by the way, was an absolutely amazing game. Watching Oregon, number one, fall on their face, and number two, kill every parlay that I had. Like, it was, but you know all day long you're not going to get the nightcap. You know all day long that you're not going to get the Sugar Bowl. More on that in just a minute. Right now, though, let's dial the clock back to New Year's Eve when LSU did wrap up their season by just taking it to Baylor. Boy, if there was any question at all about the want-to in LSU football heading into the bowl game, because that's always a question in a bowl game, is who wants to be there the most, who wants it the most, and LSU obviously did, just racking up touchdown after touchdown, although, to be fair, they did get outgained. They get outgained by Baylor in the game, but tell you what, let's take you to the second quarter real quick. One of those touchdowns, man, what could have been on this season if Chris Hilton hadn't been hurt throughout much of the year.
Looking to air it out, slings it far side, caught in stride. Chris Hilton down the far sideline into the end zone. Touchdown, Fighting Tigers. Hilton with his third touchdown of the season just blows by Caden Jenkins, the corner down the far sideline, and a beautiful throw hitting him in stride for an easy score. It's 20-7. LSU extends the lead with a point after upcoming.
And Hilton would go on to have another grab on, it was either the next drive or the one after, that would come up a yard short of a touchdown. Not to worry, though, because Trey'Dez Green would finish off this drive.
Again, just outside the 1 yard line, third down, goal to go. Twin backs. Here's the snap. Nussmeier looks right, looks back left. Wide open, it's Trey'Dez Green. His second score of the day. Touchdown, Fighting Tigers. 1 yard touchdown reception. And when you talk about being wide open, that is the textbook definition. Trey'Dez Green had nobody within 10 yards of him.
Your final score, 44-31. LSU beats Dave Aranda and the Baylor Bears. Garrett Nussmeier would have 304 yards passing on the day. Chris Hilton Jr., 113 receiving. So Tigers go into the offseason with a strong recruiting class, an unbelievably strong transfer portal class, and then a bowl game win to cap it all off. Sugar Bowl's been postponed till this afternoon. We'll talk about that right after we check in with the Fox Business Report at 6:20. So we're going to use the guy from the Sugar Bowl. And then the two FBI cuts. I'm going to hold off on Landry for right now. Do what? Yeah. Yes. Oh, NOLA. Okay, so I emailed you the Sugar Bowl guy this morning. Okay, so we'll do Sugar Bowl guy, then NOLA 1, NOLA 2. Did I win free money? Kind of. I won a $150 Amazon gift card. Morning, Haggai. Yeah. Wait till next week. We're going to vortex. Oh. You say they got bumped to prime time or a later date? Who got bumped to prime time or a later date? So Sugar Bowl's going to kick off at 3. Which is stupid. And just share the audience. It doesn't matter. Gator Bowl's going to lose their audience. Okay. They made the right call in postponing the game. Why? Right. Yeah. Right. Well, nobody's checking in. I mean, not a whole lot. All right, let's head on back to that Shaw Bills Tire Traffic Center, see what's going on. It's going to be a light morning. I mean, obviously there's no school out there, and a lot of people just take this time off of work, and they'll start the year fresh on Monday. And, yep, interstates are reflecting that. There is nothing going on 10, 12, or 110 right now. Let me re-pull up that incident list on our surface streets just to make sure before we close it out. And, yeah, there are no incidents on the surface streets as well. So there's your look at traffic from the Shaw Bills Tire Traffic Center. 624 Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP. We left one story hanging in sports, and that is that the Sugar Bowl has been postponed. Here was the official announcement from the Sugar Bowl CEO, Jeff Hundley.
Speaking of which, we were scheduled this evening to have a CFP quarterfinal played in the Superdome at 7:45. We have been in consultation with ESPN, with the College Football Playoff, with the Southeastern Conference, with the University of Georgia, with Notre Dame, all parties, and all agree that it's in the best interest of everybody and public safety that we postpone the game for 24 hours. Work is fast about to set up a safe and efficient and fun environment for tomorrow night. There'll be more details on that in the coming hours, but for now, that's the plan, that we're going to move forward and play the game. And again, we reiterate our thanks to everyone up here for the important work they're doing. We live in the fun and games world with what we do, but we certainly recognize the importance of this, and we're going to support it 100%. So thank you.
All right, so kickoff will now be 3 p.m. today for the Sugar Bowl between Georgia and Notre Dame, and that actually, I'm glad we had to postpone that until till this segment, because it walks us up to right where we're going here, and that is into the terror attack on New Orleans. As a press conference was held yesterday, the FBI was there, Governor Jeff Landry was there, Mayor LaToya Cantrell was there. For some reason, the entire legislative branch was out as well. I don't really know why. Anyway, I don't know what their role is there. But let's go ahead and start with Alethea Duncan from the FBI, the special agent in charge. Here is her talking about how they have identified the suspect.
The subject has been identified as 42-year-old Shamsud Dim Jabbar, a U.S.-born citizen from Texas. He was driving a Ford pickup truck, which appears to be rented, and we are working to confirm how the subject came in possession of this vehicle. An ISIS flag was located on the trailer hitch of the vehicle, and the FBI is working to determine the subject's potential associations and affiliations with terrorist organizations. Weapons and potential improvised explosive devices, IEDs, were located in the subject's vehicle. Other potential IEDs were also located in the French Quarter. As of now, 2 IEDs have been found and rendered safe. The FBI Special Agent bomb technicians, as well as our local law enforcement partners, have been working to determine if any of these devices are viable, and they'll work to render those devices safe. And
therein is the scary part, right? Tragedy, the tragedy that was 3:15 in the morning on Bourbon Street in Iberville, that is in and of itself bad enough. But when you have these IEDs placed around the city, and the questions then can become, are there more of them? They rendered 2 of them safe by the time of the press conference. I believe 2 more had been either disarmed or exploded on their own. Not on their own, but like under the FBI's supervision, just to get rid of them. Let's go back to Jeff Hundley's comments, the CEO of the Sugar Bowl, who didn't say we're postponing the game 24 hours out of reverence, who didn't say we're postponing the game 24 hours out of respect to the 15, or at the time, the 10, the 15 who had died, the 35 who were injured. He said out of a matter of public safety. So therein lies the scary part. It wasn't just an isolated incident where a guy jumped past the police blocking of Bourbon Street and then hauled butt all the way for 1 block and killing 15 people along the way. It wasn't just that. It was the uncertainty of what else was still out there that postponed the game. And that's where the terror comes in. Isolated incident, tragic and over. Unsolved questions, unanswered questions. Now you have terror in the hearts and minds of the people who are down in the CBD and the French Quarter. Let's continue now talking about that being an act of terrorism.
The FBI, we are working with our partners to investigate this as an act of terrorism. We're aggressively running down all of the leads to identify the possible subject's associates. We're working to ensure that there is no further threat. We do not believe that Jabbar was solely responsible. We are aggressively running down every lead, including those of his known associates. That's why we need the public's help. We are asking if anybody has any interactions with Samsud Dim Jabbar in the last 72 hours that you contact us. The FBI is asking the public's help. We're asking anyone who has information, video, or pictures to provide it to the FBI. We have set up a digital tip line as well as our 1-800 number, 1-800-CALL-FBI. Please provide us with any information that can assist us in this investigation.
We're going to dive back into the story regularly throughout the show this morning, obviously, as it is going to lead the day and probably tomorrow as well. That being said, though, this is one of those times where being on Bourbon Street, there's been no shortage of footage of this already. Being in a tourism mecca, there's going to be no shortage of footage and pictures. It's all about piecing it all together. Here comes news. Right. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to get into later on in the show about how much worse it could have been. Correct. Right. Iberville would mark the 100 block of Bourbon. From Canal to Iberville's the 100 block of Bourbon. He got one block up before running into that cherry picker or whatever it was. Number one, rewind the clock by 3 hours. If he does this at 12:30, it's a hell of a lot worse. And number two, yeah, if he goes 3-4 blocks up, tries to get in by the cat's meow, it's going to be infinitely worse there as well.
The bulks are there when you get more than one block in.
And that's the part that's not being talked about. You had a cop car there because they were being replaced.
Right.
They were malfunctioning and being replaced.
The thing that I didn't, there was a video of them sliding that piece over the middle. If he really hits that with a truck, I mean, it's not like that thing is sunk 4 feet in the ground. That pipe sticking up,
Yeah.
it's on a track that just slides across.
Yeah.
It looked like it was more visual than it's going to stop it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I just, the video was somebody, they clicking it on over by the curb and then slide it across. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Well, because they can't go down.
But I mean, if you're trying to stop somebody with more than a Toyota Corolla, I mean, you're going to plow right over that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's for visual purposes at that point. Morning, John. I'm doing great.
I'm gonna get to that question later on in the show, Troy. Chilly to start off this morning. Next week is going to be downright cold. Here with your full forecast is Balin Rogers. .637 Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP. Mornings with Brian Haldane rolling right along. We are going to get you to a Cup of Tech Gumbo in just a minute. First, though, got to remind you about the folks over at P.F. Chang's. Do you have your lunch plans yet? If you do not, it's 6:38 in the morning. Who's got their lunch plans squared away yet? Might I recommend P.F. Chang's? You're never going to go wrong with P.F. Chang's, whether you go for the Mongolian beef, whether you go for the lettuce wraps, which are so phenomenal, or do the Golden Feast. I highly, highly recommend the Golden Feast. You get the Asian-inspired or the Korean fried wings, the Asian-inspired spices, and then you get the bubbles as well. Trust me when I tell you, it's delicious and it's fun. It's both of those things. And it's available on your lunch menu at P.F. Chang's. I have yet to find something on the lunch menu, or for that matter, the dinner menu, that I don't like, that my kids don't like, that my wife doesn't like, that anybody I bring to P.F. Chang's doesn't like. It's a fantastic dining experience with traditional Chinese dishes and a number of Asian-inspired dishes as well. They're in Town Center. Look for the big golden horse. It's P.F. Chang's. All right, time for a Cup of Tech Gumbo. Let's roll. Yes, it is time for Cup of Tech Gumbo, and yes, we welcome in Haggai Davis. Good morning, sir. How are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Brian.
Before we dive in, thank you again for filling in on the 30th.
Oh, it was fun.
That's I got to listen to a little bit of the 8 o'clock hour because I was asleep before that. No, good job. You had Mike Manning in with you. Y'all knocked it out. Good stuff, and a lot of talk with Greg Wood from Rotary. I was like, it's a nice button on the year.
Yeah,
it was talk fun. About service, talk about giving back a little bit.
It was. We had, with John's help, because John does such a great job.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
It was a great day.
Awesome. We got a lot to talk about this morning. I do want to get back into the NOLA terror attacks from two different angles. Number one, when they're looking for improvised explosive devices. You and I were texting back and forth yesterday, and surprisingly, that's very low tech.
Well, the drones that they would need to do all that are flying over New Jersey right now, so they can't.
Well played.
No, they're using dogs and flashlights.
Right.
I mean, there's video footage of them sweeping the French Quarter, and it is eyeballs and dog sniffing. I mean, that's how they're doing it. I mean, it's a very, very manual process.
When it comes down to being a manual process or a canine process, as the case might be, when it comes down to that, though, you have to re-implement technology to backtime things, to backtrack things. When they find an IED, let's say they find an IED, improvised explosive device. When they find one, like let's say, and I don't know where the ones were found. I want to say one was in the 300 block of Bourbon. So let's just take that one. When they find it, now they've got to go back and re-implement the technology to go to all the surrounding areas.
Yes.
To find cameras.
there are devices where they can go and they can sniff and look for specific materials to know exactly what kind of explosive they're dealing with, and that's when they do bring in the different levels of technology. But for the most part, it's not until they actually find something that they're concerned about, then they bring in the bots that crawl up to it and they start sniffing and all of those things. And the bomb squad are, again, a manual process, but with a lot of tech on the peripheral.
With so many advancements and so many different things, why is it so hard to implement tech to do this? Like, for example, when we go to the airport, we got to stand there with there's all kinds of technology in the airport, but it still comes down to us taking off our belts and shoes. Like, why is it when it comes to something like an explosive, we can't cross that threshold?
Well, so yeah, you're doing the backsplash because it's just doing a quick scan looking for the X-ray, which has been around. But if something is odd, then they do run that little thing where they run a sniffer on your hands and on your clothes to look. It is smelling for certain materials, and that is a technology that is not just the eyeball test.
Right. Game gets postponed to today. Is that enough time, do you think, to cover enough ground? I mean, you started Superdome and work out, I guess.
So, watching some of the coverage yesterday, they had already done a full sweep on Tuesday of the entire dome. And then the attack happens overnight, and they did another full sweep of the dome and the surrounding area. They wouldn't even let the ESPN crew back into the dome to do some B-roll footage until they finished the sweep. And I would imagine they probably went through a pretty extensive, screening to let them in even at that point.
Yeah. Once they made the call to postpone it, that's when the concern really rolls in, because that's when you start realizing this was more than just a crazy guy behind a steering wheel.
Especially when they thought it was multiple people. That this guy
they
wasn't.
Still do.
Oh, I know, but I mean, they weren't sure. Okay, are there others still out there waiting to do plan B or the second phase of this?
Right.
And that's where the concern comes, and so it's going to be very, very difficult to get anything in to the dome today.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea, when the clear purse for women and jackets, and oh, by the way, it's kind of cold out there. If they didn't have metal detectors set up before, they will today.
Oh yeah, well, no, the metal detectors are there. They've been there. The clear bag policy's been there. Everything that we've been through over the last 20 plus years has kind of walked us up to this. 24 years has kind of walked us up to this. So, it's just to me, it's not the dome; it's the dome out.
What was really disappointing, especially I was flipping around between CNN and Fox and different coverage, they were all trying to make New Orleans look like these bunch of bumpkins who don't know anything about, terrorism and anti-terrorism and defending. It's like, well, they're used to just having a party and they're, they know how to deal with crowds, but they don't know how to deal with crowds who want to blow up things. And it's like, really? We have
hosted a Super Bowl since 9/11.
And Mardi Gras every year, the Sugar Bowl, all of these things. We have these massive crowds. We do know how to do with these things. This guy, when you're that motivated the way this guy was,
right,
you're going to find a small hole somewhere. There is nothing that is completely impenetrable when you have that many people involved.
Which is another good point, because this. When it all comes down to it, they had an NOPD SUV blocking Bourbon Street right there, and he found just the narrowest of gaps by going in front of the SUV and then around. Like that was more than a hairpin turn to get on Bourbon to begin with.
This is when terrorists want to do things like this, they're going to.
Yeah,
and it's just it's horrible. It's sad. It's frustrating as all hell because this is the city I was born in.
Right.
I mean, I've been standing on that corner way too many times in my life.
Yeah.
To have this close to home.
Well, and the flip side of that, though, is that it could have been much, much worse.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you talk about that, there's nothing in the 100 block of bourbon.
No.
Well, Crystal Burger. That's like
And that's kind of why I've been in that place.
you and me both. Hey, we gotta break. The story we intended to talk about before this all transpired was that TikTok is likely going to be, or possibly going to be, banned at some point during this year. We're gonna pick up on that after we take a quick break. We'll check traffic. We'll check your money now. It's 6:47. We'll continue next.
Troy's right on. You don't want that poor dog having to smell spilled beer, barf, and urine.
It's true.
So you got your annual catch up on some sleep?
And just in time, too, because January is going to be balls to the wall. So.
Going to the swearing in today?
I don't think so. I got a meeting. I got a lunch meeting today. So what time is it?
It's usually 11 a.m.
Yeah, I got a lunch at 11:30.
I went the first time Kip won. I went to that one, and that was interesting. It was worth going to one time. I don't know really all that interesting going again. I mean, I wasn't involved. If I had worked on Sid's campaign, then okay. But
oh, good morning, Christy. Welcome in, sweetheart.
morning, Christy.
I think one of the things to remember is as long as they can low-tech a bomb, you can't low-tech detection. I mean, you can't high-tech. As long as you can low-tech a bomb, you can't high-tech detection. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The fascinating thing about the Cybertruck in Vegas,
Yeah.
those things are so solid. When the explosion
It went
happened,
up. It didn't go out.
it didn't. The window's 20 feet away.
Yeah.
It didn't break.
I know. Crazy. Well, if you wanted to sell for Elon Musk, that's the way to do it.
I mean, we've done stories about these things, how the insurance companies don't want to insure them because they're so solid. When they total things,
Yeah.
and so they're afraid of them.
Yeah. For the insurance perspective, it's not about the Cybertruck getting hurt. It's about the liability.
Exactly. And so here, this thing just proved how freaking solid it is. I mean,
Zelensky condemns the New Orleans terror attack for what it's worth.
I feel so much better.
Yeah. Didn't even realize somebody asked him.
Who hadn't partied with Zelensky in the French Quarter?
Didn't he make a visit a couple years ago, like the year before last?
I know he came to the U.S. I don't know. Did he make it to New Orleans?
I don't know.
I mean, he was a comedian. He probably did a tour through the U.S. and went to the French Quarter.
He was a comedian? Interesting.
Yeah, before he ever got into politics, he was a comedian. I think I remember that correctly. Or he was an actor. He was in entertainment of some sort.
Okay.
Now, how's that for an interesting start where I know some obscure reference to something you
Right?
didn't?
.652 Talk 107.3 FM WBRP mornings with Brian Haldane rolling right along. Cup of Tech Gumbo continuing in just a little bit. We will tell you we'll have the latest on the New Orleans terror attack when we meet up with ABC News at the top of the hour, and then we'll visit with Jim Ryan from ABC News at the end of next hour to talk about that there. So, clearly this was not the show that I intended just 48 hours ago. It has definitely taken a different turn before the terror attack in New Orleans. The topic that Haggai and I planned on talking about in Cup of Tech Gumbo was the potential banning of TikTok, which today is January 2nd. 1 week and a day from now, the Supreme Court's going to hear arguments on whether or not they can ban TikTok. Walk us through what got us to here and where you think it's going to go.
So the Congress passed the law, the president passed the bill, the president signed it into law, that January 19th is the last day that TikTok can operate in the United States. It is a law.
Right.
And it isn't as much as the president-elect thinks he can just set it aside or stop it from happening. It's a law. And right now, the Supreme Court is going to, like you said, next on the 10th, have a hearing. But the Supreme Court doesn't just rule on the 10th.
Right.
They sit on things for a while, and they, after they hear the oral arguments, then they talk about it amongst themselves, and they'll come up with some kind of finding a ruling somewhere probably by March or April. And at that point, TikTok will have been shut down in the U.S. for a month or two. On the 19th, TikTok will not be allowed to operate in the U.S.
So the Supreme Court's also very much limiting what arguments are going to hear. They're hearing strictly nothing but First Amendment arguments.
Absolutely. Does the U.S. have the right to ban TikTok from operating in the U.S. is all that they're going to hear. Not whether it's a good thing, not whether or not it's the Chinese government and listening to or whatever is going on with your personal data or the data of government officials. None of that's going to come up in the court.
When it comes to the number of videos consumed, short form video in this regard, and the ad sales that go along with it, is getting rid of TikTok setting us up for a potential Instagram, Facebook, or Meta monopoly on this type of content?
Well, you're definitely going to have a lot more people push over to Instagram and to YouTube. The young kids aren't going back to Facebook. That's where grandparents go, kind of thing. So yes, you're going to see the reels that Meta has, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, all of the shorts that are on YouTube. That's where you're going to see a lot of these videos land. A lot of the influencers have been, for the past couple of weeks, the influencers on TikTok have all been saying, look, come the 19th, this is where you'll find my content.
Yeah. Everybody's bracing for it.
They
for sure.
These folks, these people who have been making a living, some of them a very comfortable living, or about to not have that stream of revenue coming from TikTok.
Okay, Congress can write a law that bans TikTok. Can Congress write a law that unbans TikTok?
Oh, sure they can. But in this political climate,
And that's exactly where I'm going.
I mean, they can't agree on the time of day right now.
Mhm.
There's no way.
Literally, when we're talking about daylight saving time.
Yes, I mean,
Yeah.
I wasn't just being funny there. They're trying to talk about it, and they can't decide if they want to even talk about it.
Right.
Much less decide one way or another on the subject.
Mhm.
This ban is going to happen on the 19th. By law, it has to.
Okay. Now, that being said, if it's a ban in name, the U.S. Attorney General, there's no law enforcement office that's going to enforce the ban, though. So, is it going to be a ban in name only?
No, because the iPhones and the Android phones will have to stop allowing that service to flow through to. I mean, the internet service providers will have to cut off access in the U.S. to TikTok, and that's what's going to stop. That's where the ban's going to be. The app will still live on your phone until Apple and Androids remove it from their stores. The videos that if you've got a whole bunch of TikTok videos, and you can download them if you want to save your videos.
Yeah.
So you can go back and watch them again. But that streaming platform will not work in the U.S. after the 19th, according to the law. The question comes in, okay, well, hey, I've got a VPN. I can just set myself to go to France.
Right.
Can I pull the videos? Yes, you can. Now, they may be French, in the French language for the French people. There may be some overdubbing over. I don't know. Set your VPN to go to Great Britain then. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens with TikTok.
I'm still not 100% convinced that on January 20th I'm not going to have TikTok on my phone. I'm not 100% convinced that this is going to actually play out the way everyone says it's going to play out, because there's so much revenue, so many incomes, side hustles and whatnot on the line, side hustles, main hustles, and just great content on the line that, man, I pushback is going to happen.
But if you're the internet service provider, do you want to be in violation of the law by allowing this service to go through your system?
Be in violation of a law that they've already said that there is not going to be
doesn't
enforced?
matter. It's a law, and so if you're the internet service provider and you're still pushing TikTok through, now you're subject to having a visit from the FCC, and you're not. If you're the internet service provider, you're not making the additional money by having TikTok. Your client is paying for that internet bandwidth, whether or not TikTok is there or not. So Cox, AT&T, T-Mobile, whoever you want to go into, they're not making additional money from TikTok.
He is Haggai Davis to do a cup of tech gumbo at this time just about every week. We always appreciate the time, sir.
Love it.
Here comes news. More on the NOLA terror attacks headed your way. So Congress had the CEO of ByteDance on, who said repeatedly ByteDance is not beholden to the Chinese government. It didn't matter how many different ways he said it, they're just not going to believe him. Now, conversely, we have seen Facebook, who has now since admitted it, actively manipulate an election. So we've written a law to ban the company that has shown that they're not, that it's a more open form of speech. It's a greater flow of information in order to push more business back to the person who has actively tried to manipulate an election.
I agree. I mean, I think this is ridiculous. I mean, China bad, California good. We've said it how many times that, I mean, Google, YouTube, all the meta platforms, Twitter, they're all doing the exact same thing TikTok is doing.
Right. Just
But
not as well.
Not as well. But China, even though TikTok says, we have this big firewall between ByteDance and the Chinese government, there's, they can say that all they want. Everyone knows the difference. And Debbie, is sitting there saying the U.S. Treasury was hacked and these guys are worried about TikTok. We've talked about Salt Typhoon. For 6 weeks, we've been talking about that. So that's not new news, by the way.
What? Salt Typhoon?
Salt Typhoon is this Chinese hacking group that got into the U.S. telecom providers and the Treasury Department. And they got into the Treasury through the telecom hacks that they got in. And so that's not new news.
But her point still remains.
Oh, sure. I mean, look, I don't want to talk about TikTok. I could care less about TikTok. I'm not a TikTok subscriber. I've never been on the platform. I've seen some of the videos, obviously, but I mean, it's not important to me, but there's a lot of people that this is important to because it's their business. It's how they earn money to put food on the table. And, that's kind of a relevant story.
We didn't get into the possible sale part of that.
They're not going to sell. Number one, you would have the amount of money it would cost. Very few people. You'd have to put together a whole string of people who could fund it, but they're not going to sell. Even though the U.S. is the biggest money maker for TikTok, they're not going to sell. They would rather screw it. I just don't see them. If they would have sold, they would have sold 4 years ago with when Microsoft tried to buy them. I think it's clearly very well established that John thinks I'm the best of the guest hosts.
Yeah.
I would say the same.
Just because I bring in the whole lineup already printed out.
Well, I'm sure that's helpful.
Man, that does something for me. When you come in and there's a layout, I'm like, oh,
I don't know how you don't do that.
oh man.
I'm
There's
sure
nothing against anybody else. Just some people are like, let's wing it. Let's just see what happens. I'm like, okay, I'll keep you on time.
I didn't get to hear David at all.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's one to just say, let's just roll with it.
Okay. Well,
I'm like, hey, I know.
because I slept. I slept that day. I didn't get his text message either.
And there's nothing against like that. Like if you can roll like that, like man, I'm all for it. But I'll keep you on time. Like whatever you want to do in between, I'm with you. But man, when you came in with a schedule, I'm like, oh, beautiful, beautiful. Like,
Have a great day.
You too. Thank you, Haggai.
And I'm
Out next week.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
have a good one, I guess.
7:05 Talk 107.3 FM WBRP mornings with Brian Haldane, rolling right along. Hour 2 coming your way right now. Brian here with you, John LaBeouf producing. You heard the story in ABC News at the top of the hour. You've been hearing the story basically on repeat. Well, it's not really on repeat because there's more added to it regularly. But since yesterday morning, our lead today is the terror attack in New Orleans, 15 dead, 35 injured, and not an isolated incident. We're going to have a lot more on that as the next 2 hours of the show wear on. That being said, though, we do still have the rest of the show to tend to. Thanks again to Haggai Davis for stopping by for a cup of tech gumbo. This hour, we're going to talk with Tommy Faucheaux from the Louisiana Mid-Continent Oil and Gas Association. Going to be a big year. Going to be a big year for Tommy and his outfit, and quite frankly, the entire field. We talked with Tommy a couple weeks ago. We're basically going to pick that conversation up where it left off. We'll kind of reset the table a little bit before we get into what we can expect from oil and gas this year. Tommy Faucheaux at 7:15. Crimestoppers at 7:35. Lieutenant Don Capola is going to be stopping by. We'll see if we can catch some bad guys for sure, but I want to broaden out the conversation right there to talk about this terror attack and what goes into putting the pieces of the puzzle together. When you're talking about Bourbon Street, you're talking about a lot of security cameras. You're talking about a lot of tourists' cameras. You're talking about a lot of folks who are looking for pics, are looking for videos. Just there's a lot that goes into this and a lot of tiny, tiny pieces to a bigger puzzle that's going to be going on. We'll talk with Don Coppola at 7:35. Right now, though, top stories and trending. Let's get it.
Number 5.
Members of Louisiana's congressional delegation declared yesterday that law officers would track down anyone who helped stage the overnight attack on Bourbon Street. According to police, Samsud-Din Jabbar, 42 years old of Texas, drove a rented pickup truck past a police car blocking Bourbon Street at the intersection with Canal, sped into the French Quarter, killed 15, injured 35 more. Investigators do not believe that Jabbar acted alone. The Associated Press reported yesterday, or the FBI reported yesterday, that investigators had seen video showing 3 men and a woman placing an improvised explosive device believed to be part of the car attack. The FBI has detonated a few of those devices already. Can tell you right now, we're going to talk with ABC's Jim Ryan at the end of this hour. Terrorism expert Paul Viollis next hour. I have reached out to the FBI. They are not doing individual interviews right now, and the governor's schedule today did not allow for an interview during the show this morning. So we'll re-effort the governor again tomorrow, and we will re-effort the FBI as time wears on. But as of right now, with the state of the investigation the way it is, we're only going to hear from press conferences and statements.
Number 4.
With the new year comes some flexibility for insurance companies, making it more palatable for them to do business in Louisiana. As of yesterday, the 3-year rule is no longer a thing in this state. This was the rule that said insurance companies could not cancel or renew any policy that had been in effect for more than 3 years. That rule is gone. Also now, insurance companies have more flexibility when it comes to raising deductibles.
Number 3.
And the insurance companies aren't the only ones benefiting from new laws kicking in. As of yesterday, our income tax dropped to 3%, and dozens of laws hit the books on everything from how child support is handled to seafood safety. Those all went into effect yesterday.
Number 2.
2 people were dead after 2 separate shootings in Baton Rouge on New Year's Eve. 44-year-old William Bradford was shot about 4:25 p.m. on O'Neill Lane near the I-12 exit. He was brought to the hospital where he died from his injuries. In another incident, 31-year-old James Weber was shot and killed on Greenwell Springs Road. This was about 4 hours later. 3 suspects were seen fleeing the scene in a black vehicle in that incident.
Number 1.
We have our first homicide of 2025 on the books. 1 person is dead after shooting on Longfellow Drive and Hollywood Street, according to BRPD. Officers said the shooting happened around 3:24 p.m. yesterday. 35-year-old Terry Wayne Jones was found with multiple gunshot wounds, died on the scene. This is an ongoing investigation. Anyone with information is asked to call Crimestoppers at 344-STOP. What is trending there, Sean?
Well, of course, the terror attack in New Orleans is the biggest story today, both locally and nationally.
Yeah, and we're going to continue to dive into it from every angle. A lot of great conversation going on our Facebook Live feed with so many questions. And every question that gets answered opens up 10 more questions, right?
Yeah.
And isn't that the nature of these? Yeah, it's the nature of these investigations. You can't get away from it like that. I would say this, though, before we move on to what else is trending this morning. I would say this, though, a little bit of deference for law enforcement here. We all have the benefit of hindsight.
Yes.
Nobody went into New Year's Eve saying, I bet you there's going to be a terror attack on Bourbon Street. Nobody did that. So we all have the benefit of saying what they should have done. This was one that if you've seen the footage of the truck whipping around the NOPD SUV that was blocking Bourbon and Canal,
It's so fast.
Yeah.
It happens
It's so fast that it's such a difficult maneuver, and it's got to be so deliberate, and law enforcement has reacted well. To me, reacted well. Not proactively, but reactively, to be sure. And we're going to get into all of the rest of it as the show wears on.
Yes, indeed. Heading into the new year, Congressman Mike Johnson got the endorsement of President-elect Donald Trump to retain his post as Speaker of the House.
That was supposed to be a bigger topic for today.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be a much bigger topic for today, to be sure. Obviously, the events of New Year's morning have push that to the back burner for right now. It'll come back up again when they go to a vote, getting ready for the next congressional session. But if you're Mike Johnson, you got to feel a little bit good about that. Donald Trump has a lot of support right now, has a mandate right now. And when you've got the backing of the guy who's got the mandate, you've got it all.
Yes, indeed. Meanwhile, over in Las Vegas, a Tesla Cybertruck exploded at the front doors of the Trump International Hotel yesterday.
Okay, so FBI, law enforcement, they've been looking all over the place for some level of connection between what happened in New Orleans and what happened in Las Vegas. They've been scrubbing all over the place. Well, I got this news advisory. It was like 5:20 this morning. All right, so it's not from our current news partners. It's from our previous news partners.
Okay.
I just kind of stayed on the email list. Law enforcement has confirmed that the Cybertruck in Las Vegas incident was rented to Matthew Allen Leibelsberger, an active duty U.S. Army service member who was serving in Germany but was on leave in Colorado at the time of the incident. Relatives of Leibelsberger were unable to connect his involvement to the incident. They confirmed he had rented a Cybertruck through the same rental platform that the guy in New Orleans did.
Right.
Now, there are odd similarities between the two incidents. Now, nobody's connecting these dots yet. They're just pointing out similarities between the two. And of those similarities, the timing on New Year's Day is one of them, obviously, right? Both attacks involved trucks that were rented from Turo, T-U-R-O, and both involved U.S.-born military servicemen who served in Afghanistan around the same time. So this might be like, pins and yarn on the conspiracy theory board at this point.
Right.
But as they're looking for things that would link it together, nothing is connected, but they are similarities. 713, Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, Tommy Faucheaux from the Louisiana Mid-Continent Oil and Gas Association joins us next. I'm going to do Vex European here. I don't want to bump, I want to get the live reads in around the, not bumped up against the tragedy. Scusi. Debbie says still questioning why NOLA. Going to get into that later on as well with Jim Ryan. .716 Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP. Mornings with Brian Haldane rolling right along. We're going to get to Tommy Faucheaux from the Louisiana Mid-Continent Oil and Gas Association here in just a second. I do need to remind you about the folks over at Vex European. VEX, by the way. That's V as in Vinny. VexEuropean.com is the website. If you drive a European vehicle, you need a little of expertise. You need someone who specializes in European vehicles. If you've got a Mercedes, you're going to get a Mercedes tech. BMW tech. A Porsche, a McLaren, an Audi, a Land Rover, you name it, they've got you covered over at Vex European. That's what they do. It is where precision meets performance. It says it right there on their website. Look, I drive a now 17-year-old car. I need all the tender loving care I can get, right? All the TLC that I can get. That's what I get from Vex European. When I hit that gas pedal, oh, it's got a little giddy up. Yeah, it's got all the wear and tear of a 17-year-old Mercedes. But when I hit that gas pedal, thanks to Vinny and his team, oh, it's got some punch. It knows what it's doing. They know what they're doing. You can give them a call, 225-800-4706, 225-800-4706, or do like I did. Start over at Vex, VEX, European.com. All right, heading into the holiday season, we were doing a little year in review recap, and with a number of different outlets. One of those was Tommy Faucheaux from the Louisiana Mid-Continent Oil and Gas Association, and he had so much on his plate. We said, you know what? We got to pick this up at the beginning of the new year and continue, because there's a lot going on. Tommy, welcome back. Happy New Year. How are you, sir?
Happy New Year. Good morning. I'm doing well, considering. How are you?
The considering is a big part of that. Yes, doing well on this end as well. And yeah, it's this is going to weigh on all of us for some time.
Yeah, look, I mean, we all love New Orleans. Anybody who works, not just in our industry, but I think who works in business, leadership, people who understand the culture of where we live, this is personal. And it's going to take a while to process. It's where we go. It's where we have fun. It's where we do business. But, look, New Orleans is resilient. New Orleans is strong, and I'm confident we will see the city, the state, everyone bounce back from this. But yeah, it's something we have to keep the people who were killed and injured in the front of our minds, because they deserve our thoughts and, more importantly, our prayers.
100%, absolutely. Yeah, wouldn't have it any other way, because it's you're talking 15 dead, 35 injured. It's just that it's hard to move on and talk about anything else. At the same time, though, we do have business to tend to here. I don't know how to successfully transition out of that. So let's just dive in.
Let's do it.
All right, 2025 for the Louisiana Mid-Continent Oil and Gas Association is going to bring us what?
Well, I think it brings opportunities, both at the state and federal level. We were talking before the holidays. A lot happened at the end of the year, the special session dealing with tax reform, the election at the federal level, and the election of President Trump and his return to the White House. Those two items alone, I think, tee up for us a big 2025. And, I'll tell you why. Let's start at the federal level, where I finished with the elections. A lot of what happens in the energy space in Louisiana is dictated in many ways by federal policy. All of our offshore Gulf of Mexico activity regulated by the federal government. A lot of the rules of the road for refineries, for LNG companies, governed by the EPA, again, the federal government. So I think when you see such a significant change in the occupant of the White House, the administration in which President Trump is going to build clearly will have an impact. Now, it's not, I think a lot of people automatically assume that overnight everything is different. No, that's not the case. I mean, he still has to build a new team. We have to be advocates for what we believe is right for a strong Louisiana oil and gas industry, both in the Gulf of Mexico, up and down the river, southwest Louisiana. There's a lot of places that we think a Trump administration will make positive changes for industry. But we have to do our part. We have to be advocates for what makes sense for the industry, what makes sense for Louisiana communities. And so I think, one, right out of the gate at the federal level, you're going to see a big year in 2025. And then at the state level, we're not done with taxes. We're not done with state policy. A lot of legislation was passed in November of last year. We're still understanding some of that legislation. There's more that we know will come in this next fiscal session, which will start in April. Mm-hmm. And that's assuming there's not a special somewhere in between there on insurance or other items. So The work didn't finish when we left right before the holidays. It's only going to pick up, and I think, at faster pace in the new year.
We're talking with Tommy Faucheaux from the Louisiana Mid-Continent Oil and Gas Association. Tommy, while you talk about the positivity, and I'm not trying to be a wet blanket here, but when you talk about the positivity of a Trump administration rolling in, these things don't happen overnight. I mean, even if the mantra is drill, baby, drill, you don't say drill, baby, drill on Tuesday and then see a new well on Wednesday.
Absolutely correct. I think, again, we have been engaged. We sent a list of priorities via a letter to the transition just before the holidays, because we want them, if they're not starting with a white sheet of paper by any means. Right. One, this administration has been there before. However, if they're filling out staff at regulatory agencies, we want them to know what our priorities are. I do think, obviously we have a moment here because we also have what we believe will be a supportive Congress. We've been very active in advocating for what we want with members of Congress. We don't stop because we did not stop just because there was a Biden administration, which was less friendly to energy and oil and gas production. We've been there doing the work, knowing that many members of Congress would be there in a new term. And so it doesn't happen overnight. We will be very, very vigilant as they go through the process. You don't get automatic wins on anything in Washington. You have to do the work, and I think that's going to be particularly important.
So walk us through a little bit of that timeline and what that looks like, though. Like how long before we start to see more people employed, more jobs being added, more energy being created in Louisiana? Are there applications and permits and everything that just kind of fell to the wayside that can be picked up mid-process where they were left off with the Biden administration?
Well, we believe there are some areas where you could see some rather quick opportunities. So let's start in the offshore space. I've said over and over again for the last 3 years or so that the offshore leasing plan for the Gulf of Mexico, I called it anemic. It was almost non-existent. I mean, we had the first ever lapse in the plan. Pretty quickly, the administration could come in via its executive authority and start moving more quickly and adding lease sales, which are our opportunities to bid on the territory in the Gulf of Mexico for future oil and gas production. Now, remember, we always say from the time a lease is awarded to the time you have, production, it's roughly a 10-year window. So just as we were not going to feel immediate negative effects in a Biden administration, even as we make executive actions in a positive way, again, that doesn't necessarily add jobs overnight. Right. But we're playing a long game here. We have built a more than 100-year industry. We want to make sure it continues for the next 100 years. So you have to take the steps now. They're going to benefit you, 5-10 years down the road. And so, but I think leasing will send, increased lease sales would send a very quick signal to the industry that there is predictable opportunities. And that's good because companies don't invest for tomorrow. They invest for the long term. And investment for the long term is what ultimately leads to increased job growth, predictability around revenues. And those are all the things we need from a state perspective for positive growth in any number of areas. If you know you have the revenue, you can make investments in everything from infrastructure to education, and that is good. And so I think lease sales is one place we could see some quick opportunity. Look, the LNG activity right now is really booming. You have Venture Globals. I think who just sent one of their first shipments out of their new facility down at the mouth of the river over the holidays. Cheniere, you have Woodside Energy, who's investing in Southwest Louisiana. You have companies that are wanting to do more in the LNG space. The Biden administration put a pause on potential new LNG permits. That's, again, another area where you could see a quick turnaround with a Trump administration providing opportunities for future certainty and continued investment. We've just had significant investments in LNG that's another opportunity for us as well. Two quick areas right there. I think you could see positive movement.
Tommy Faucheaux from Louisiana Mid-Continent Oil and Gas Association with us. Elaborate on that for just a minute, if you could, about how LNG can pick up quicker than say your lease sale applications.
Yeah, I think what it is I think the market is there right now.
Mm-hmm.
Louisiana LNG companies have been exporting natural gas now around the world consistently, and because they see continued demand, those companies want to continue to invest. What the Biden administration was doing was basically saying, look, we don't know that we want American energy companies to just ship natural gas around the world. And of course, they were doing it in an effort to reduce fossil fuel consumption. Well, those companies, once again, just like the refineries were doing 4 years ago, start saying, well, geez, if the federal government is not going to allow us to do this, in the near future, why would we continue to invest?
Right.
Why would we increase capacity? Pretty quickly, it's obvious that the market wants the product. It's obvious that allies, need that support. This is just a way, I believe, that we can take some of the regulatory roadblocks and obstacles out of the way and really just clear the highway for Louisiana energy companies, in this case LNG companies, to invest and do what it does best. One, supply the needs of allies and others around the world. Two, continue to invest and create opportunity in Louisiana for Louisianians.
We got about 2 minutes left here, Tommy. Hey, I want to spend those last 2 minutes talking about carbon capture, because while CCUS might not be an LMOGA's acronym there, it's certainly part of the business plan.
Sure. Look, we have been spending a lot of time the last 2 years on carbon capture. We think it is a place where Louisiana can lead.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen a lot of companies investing in these projects. We are at a point, and 2025 is going to be a big year, because this is the year where I think we will start to see some of these Class 6 well permits. These are the permits needed to drill the Class 6 wells to inject carbon. This is the year where we're going to start seeing some of those permits issued by the State Department of Energy and Natural Resources. It's very important that they have an expeditious process with all the proper review, but that they start moving on those permits, because we've spent a lot of time at the legislature working with local communities to build the framework for this to really succeed and create new opportunities in Louisiana. We are going to be at that point in 2025 where we need to see those permits start to be issued, and I'm optimistic that they will be. There's no reason why they shouldn't. That's going to be important for the industry. Again, just one of those opportunities. And remember, carbon capture and sequestration complements the energy and petrochemical industry of Louisiana. It allows us to continue to meet carbon goals and continue to invest in traditional oil and gas and petrochemicals production. One doesn't happen in isolation without the other. CCS complements the existing industry. It's why those companies want to invest here. It's because they see it all working together in a way that provides opportunity across the board.
You going to Washington Mardi Gras?
I am. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
We'll be here soon.
We will be up there. Looking forward to seeing you up in maybe the 65th Parish. Maybe get you on the show while we're there.
That's right. We'll spend some time. I'd be happy to sit with you.
Awesome. He's Tommy Faucheaux from the Louisiana Mid-Continent Oil and Gas Association. We always appreciate the time, man. Talk to you soon.
All right, Brian. Take care.
You too. 7:30 at Talk 107.3 FM. Let's get the latest from ABC News. Oh. What you say? Good morning. Was it? Wait till next Thursday. That would be difficult with this temperature. By the way, letting you know right now, Thursday the 23rd, I will be in Washington, D.C. So I know you map out iCare towards the end of the month. So, yes, sir. Yeah, we'd taken the last 2 weeks off. Well, same. Yeah, that's exactly why I text. Just to make sure. Yeah. It was good to get out of here. It was good to get some rest. I mean, I know January is going to be balls to the wall, so. Between here, DJing, and LSU, between the three jobs, I've got something that's darn near every day. And then on top of that, coaching James's basketball team. We got 4 games this month and 3 practices, so there's 7 more days where you got something added to the calendar. And then I'll leave on January 22nd to go to Washington, D.C. and come home on the 25th. So there's 4 days of the month that's just gone.
That'd be nice, though, to get away.
Yeah, but I work around the clock while I'm there. I do 2 shows a day.
By yourself, or
Gordy's going with me.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what the division of responsibility is going to be as far as, like, if I can swing, like, him going to some of those midday conferences and meetings and whatnot and me sneaking away to go to nap, that would be awesome. So.
But the missus doesn't go with you?
No, it's all business. I've never been to the ball on Saturday night. I don't want to go to the ball without her, so And she's like, no, go. And I'm like, no. I go there. I do all my work. I do go out Friday night after the formal ball. There's a formal, like, tableau on Friday that I skip, and then I go to some of the after parties instead. So, yeah, I do that for sure.
Hey, are you going to bring up the New Orleans?
Yeah. 7:36 to Talk 107.3 FM WBRP. It's a chilly one out there. However, it's going to get colder next week. With your full forecast, here's WBRZ meteorologist Balin Rogers. Yeah, I want to talk about we'll start with the New Orleans thing, just how many pieces to a puzzle there are, and just how it's a good exercise for all of us to walk through the if you see something, say something mentality. Oh. 7:38 Talk 107.3 FM WBRP. Mornings with Brian Haldane rolling right along. 41 degrees in downtown Baton Rouge as we make our way through the 7 o'clock hour. Terror attack 3:15 a.m. yesterday in New Orleans. As you've heard the story on repeat now. As truck hauls up Bourbon Street, kills 15 people. The driver of the truck kills 15 people, injures 35 more. There are going to be so many pieces of this puzzle that still need to be put together. And coincidentally, every Thursday at this time, we have a segment where we talk about putting pieces of the puzzle together to help solve crimes. It's time for Crimestoppers. Yes, it is time for Crimestoppers, and we welcome in Lieutenant Don Capola. Happy New Year, Don. How are you, sir?
Hey, Brian. Happy New Year. Good morning.
Good morning. I know every Happy New Year issued at this point has that weight that comes with it because of what happened in New Orleans yesterday. So.
Well, and not only New Orleans, Brian, but we talk about unsolved homicides all the time.
Yes,
and
yes.
That those in our 8 parish area, and as we say, Happy New Year, a lot of those families is not because their loved ones, they don't have the closure, which then brings us to the event yesterday morning,
right?
In New Orleans, just a tragic event.
Now, yeah, and sometimes tragedy goes beyond tragedy, and I think that's where we're at on this one. But I wanted to use it as an opportunity to talk about what Crimestoppers does, because when you think about it on a ginormous scale, this is what we talk about on a regular basis. If you see something, say something. There are people up and down Canal Street in the moments leading up to that. There are people who were on Bourbon Street who were either getting out of the way. Now we there's enough cameras on Bourbon. We saw what transpired there.
Yes,
but broaden things out to where they're looking for improvised explosive devices throughout. The quarter and the CBD yesterday. They detonated a number of them as well. So we really need to broaden out the discussion to everyday people doing their everyday lives, but keeping their head on a swivel.
Exactly, and as you mentioned, every week we talk about that, and our prayers, our thoughts, our condolences go out to those not only who lost lives, but who were injured or was even there, and it is a fluid and ongoing investigation, but there's a lot of video that has surfaced from that, and just to see from the vehicle turning onto Bourbon and appears to accelerate, and then people running and dodging out the way, And, law enforcement did a phenomenal job because of the fact, just from hearing the press conferences and the intent that this individual had, it could have been a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
But, as you mentioned, we at Capital Region Crimestoppers reached out to Greater New Orleans Crimestoppers just to say, hey, if there's anything that we can assist with, don't hesitate.
Yeah.
And we want people to know that if you're, from our area and have information, get us that information and we can get it to New Orleans or whoever it needs to go to assist with this.
So where we're at here is obviously the person who was driving the truck has been killed. That person was put down, and where we're at now though is NOPD or FBI, NOPD, and other law enforcement outlets are looking for others who are connected to, because they don't believe he acted alone, who are connected to the incident either directly or peripherally.
Yes.
Now, if you were in New Orleans for New Year's Eve and you made your way back home, this would be as good of a time as any to go through every photo you took, every video you took, if you were down there at all, because you don't know where improvised explosive devices may have been planted. And
exactly.
Maybe you got pictures, you got video of somebody in the background who was doing something, up to something that was just evil and nefarious. And you're like, oh, I was nowhere near the 100 block of Bourbon. Doesn't matter. This is broader than that at this point. So go back through your phone, and that brings us to when you do, you get the P3 app.
Exactly, and not only just play it back in your mind. I remember seeing this. And don't think, don't discard that information, because that may be the information we speak of on a weekly basis. That may be that missing piece that they need.
Yeah.
And with this, up to this point, they've done a fantastic job. But as you mentioned, they believe there's more who were connected with this. So if you remember seeing, hearing, get us that information. We'd rather have it, let investigators follow through with it, and it turn out to be nothing, and instead of it being that piece that they need.
Yeah, and when it comes to the P3 app, it's unbelievably easy to get that information over to y'all. And like Don said, it's just go back through your mind. You remember posing for a picture, but do you remember who was off to your side, who was behind you?
Exactly.
Do you remember who was in the background, the foreground? I mean, that's that. All these things can help piece together along the way. Even if you were let's say you were over at Jackson Square, let's say you were closer to Decatur, like you didn't necessarily have to be on Bourbon, which is where the truck attack happened, but
it's
other
so much
things
broader
right,
than that. Yes,
absolutely.
And to the unknown, I think is how many people, how many more,
right,
where, and that's what we want to assist investigators in finding that information.
Absolutely. So download the P3 app. And we always say it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Of course, 344-STOP is the local number here. 344-STOP locally. If you can help out, the FBI's got their tip line open as well.
They have their tip line
for more
as well.
direct access. But
if you feel comfortable contacting Crimestoppers,
that's
which is anonymous. We do, even the tips we get in, we read, we vet, we do everything we can to protect your anonymity. So by all means, I'm not talking bad about the FBI's line. I just don't know.
No.
But I do know that Crimestoppers, Capital Region Crimestoppers, has been around for over 40 years, and it's a worldwide program. So you can trust it. Get us that information. Greater New Orleans is also connected with P3. So outside of the rapport that we have with them, we're connected in that way as well.
So, where I was going with the P3 app or with 344-STOP is not just the longevity and reputation that Crimestoppers has, but the connectivity and ability to work in other places. You and I have talked about people being found in Oklahoma
Yes.
and coming back, being shipped back here or extradited back here. Like we've seen this happen before where y'all have worked in collaboration with law enforcement outlets from around the country. So even though you're in Baton Rouge, if you feel more comfortable in Baton Rouge, staying in Baton Rouge, starting with Crimestoppers is not where the information is going to stop.
No, correct.
That being said, we're already 7 minutes into the segment, Don. We got some fugitives to catch here as well.
We do. We're going to start. The East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office is looking for Tyler Smith, 23 years old, on the charge of domestic abuse, battery, strangulation. Investigators believe that he and a female acquaintance engaged in a verbal argument, which then quickly escalated to him putting his hands on her, forcefully grabbed around her neck area, applied pressure. She lost consciousness briefly.
Oh, gosh.
As she came to, was able to get to the phone, call the police. And, of course, at that point in time when she's calling the police, Tyler leaves.
Yeah.
Okay, he don't want to stick around for that.
Obviously.
So Tyler Smith, 23 years old, wanted on domestic abuse, battery, strangulation charges through the East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office. Baton Rouge police are looking for Torian Hayes, 20 years old, on the charge of battery of a dating partner. Similar situation, a female acquaintance. In this case, Hayes had some medical procedures done. She was actually going to help change bandages.
Oh, no way.
She gets there, turns off the TV. He was listening to music, which investigators believe irritated him. An altercation occurred verbally. It started with a verbal altercation, which quickly escalated to physical. So Torian Hayes is wanted by the Baton Rouge Police Department for charge of battery of a dating partner.
Torian Hayes, you said?
Yes. And, of course, check out our Capital Region Crimestoppers.
Well, that's why I've been bumping around the Crimestoppers Facebook page in prep for today's show. Like before the events of yesterday morning transpired, that's where I was at. There's no shortage of posts heading into the new year. But where you started the segment, Donna, and we got 1 minute left, that's where I want to end it, is that when we do say Happy New Year, I couldn't help but notice a refresh of a number of older stories y'all were reposting again. Because
yes.
There are still those people without closure.
Exactly. And we don't want those families to think that, it's been X amount of time you're forgotten about. That is not the case. And we want your listeners, they may not have information, but their friends, their coworkers, their employees, whoever it may be, may have information on a case that is unsolved. And what we would like to do, and I've said it before, we cannot bring these loved ones back, but just to give those families the closures that they need to know that the ones responsible are behind bars.
Once again, 344-STOP is the phone number, 344-STOP, or download the P3 app. Check out the Capital Region Crimestoppers page as well. Lieutenant Don Coppola, always appreciate the time.
Thank you, Brian.
Here's Your Money Now. Didn't catch that guy in East Glen Haven? I guess not. Y'all posted up on December 28th, attempting to identify burglary suspects from East Glen Haven. The burglary actually happened in late October. I know right where to find him. But, so, that little Vietnamese restaurant on Florida? Yeah, right behind by Lil John. You go. Okay, further east than that, though. Broadmoor Plantation is further west than that. But it's another apartment complex in between that Vietnamese place and the Advance Auto, or where Big Lots was, or Dirty, or whatever. What the place with the chicken for a mascot? Dirt Cheap. Dirt Cheap. Do what? You did?
Believe it or not, buddy, off of just east of Flannery, Ponderosa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was on with feed.
Our friends Tiffany and Clint, they live off that neighborhood off Ponderosa.
But I don't know how it is now, but it was a great. Down from Bel Air, right?
Clint went to Bel Air as well.
What's his last name?
Summers.
I'm sure. I may be older. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think they're a little bit. Yeah, they're a little bit younger than me and Christy, so I appreciate it.
Thank you. If you
Always.
need something in the meantime, let me know.
You too.
Try not to go too crazy with all your work events.
I'm nice and planned out this year. I have everything on the calendar. There's, they say best laid plans of mice and men, right? I'm hoping nothing catches me by surprise. Oh.
You have a good day.
You do the same, good sir.
Yes, sir.
Be good, sir.
Yes, sir. You too.
There's Jim. I knew what you meant. I knew what you meant. Nobody would claim to be me. Oh, 7:55 Talk 107.3 FM WBRP mornings with Brian Haldane rolling right along. Of course, we can't go too far into the show without recapping our top story of the day, and that is the terror attack down in New Orleans. Joining us now from ABC News is Jim Ryan. Jim, good morning. Welcome aboard. Welcome back. How are you, sir?
Hey, Brian. How are you?
As well as can be expected when the tragedy hits this close to home, just an hour down the road, and a number of Baton Rougeans were killed in this attack. So it is all with a grain of salt, to be sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a horrific situation here, and people were very subdued last night. The Sugar Bowl was supposed to be played yesterday. It's been moved to today, but there were still fans of both Georgia and Notre Dame in the French Quarter last night, not on Bourbon Street. Bourbon Street was still closed, but on Royal, it was just a very, very quiet place last night. The game will be played this afternoon. I think there's still a lot of anxiety on the part of people who came here specifically for the game, and, of course, people who came here to celebrate New Year's early yesterday morning after what happened. A pickup truck speeds down Bourbon Street, killing 15 people, injuring more than 30 others. 2 police officers also were hurt in the shootout with Shamsuddin Jabbar, the man who was at the wheel of that truck, Jabbar, was killed. Those 2 police officers are expected to recover.
I've seen a couple of different maps showing different locations as to how far Jabbar got up Bourbon Street. Most of the reporting said it was Bourbon and Iberville, but there's a map at NOLA.com that shows it got actually past Bienville Street. And that's a big deal, Jim, because the further you get into Bourbon Street, the more heavily packed the bars are, the more dense the populace is just roaming around out in the street. How far up did he get?
About 3 blocks.
Yeah.
I'm at 300. I mean, right outside my window is where that truck came to rest after it slammed into a hydraulic construction lift. So it was about 3 blocks. And you're right, that's about where it was. The crowd, it had thinned out somewhat because it was 3:30 in the morning. It wasn't midnight at the moment that the year changed over. So a lot of folks had gone home, but certainly the street was still fairly full of people. And I've seen video of folks on the sidewalks, people walking the street. It's a pedestrian walkway, as you know, after dark. And so it's not as though a lot of car traffic was around anyway.
We're talking with ABC's Jim Ryan. Okay, a lot of talk about the bollards not being up. Those were in the process of being replaced. How much of the conversation has revolved around that within the press conferences down there?
Well, a lot of questions about why the upgrades that were supposed to be in place for the Super Bowl in just a few weeks were not in place for New Year's Eve. It was not a difficult matter for this man to drive around the barricades that were in place and to then race up Bourbon Street just as fast as he wanted to. You're right, Brian. There's a lot of conversation about that, about the switchover and why it wasn't completed before New Year's as opposed to the Super Bowl.
2 minutes left here with ABC News' Jim Ryan, and I appreciate you carving out a couple minutes this morning. I know the information's coming in pretty fast and furious at this point. The postponing of the Sugar Bowl, I think, is one of the more alarming parts of this because investigators did find a number of IEDs, pipe bombs, that were supposed to be remote detonated. What's the latest on that, and what feel do they have as the level of safety for folks getting to and from the quarter into the dome and back?
Well, I think that there is a level of comfort, I suspect. I mean, the organizers of the Sugar Bowl say that they postponed it for a day, not for security purposes, but out of respect for the victims, the 15 who died and the 36 or so who were hurt. Now, there is this talk about other devices that were discovered around the French Quarter. There was one cooler that was found some distance away, a drink cooler that had wires and tape and stuff in it, and that was detonated by police. The one remote control device was still in the truck. There were 2 devices in or near the pickup truck itself when it finally came to rest after the crash. But, I mean, certainly the police think that other people may have been involved, if, in fact, those were other devices planted around by someone else. We also had a fire that was at the Airbnb, the little house where Jabbar was staying before this all happened. The fire happened sometime before the crash, or before he came down Bourbon Street. And so did someone else light that fire? Did he set that fire? Was it a remotely controlled sort of thing? Well, we don't know that. I mean, we're only, 27, 28 hours into this thing. Yeah. The investigation is still very young, Brian.
And we'll have a lot more to follow up on in the meanwhile. I appreciate you carving out a couple minutes. ABC News' Jim Ryan. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brian.
Absolutely. Here's ABC News Now. That's not what the guy who runs the Sugar Bowl said. He said out of public safety.
Yeah.
Jim's good, though. Jim's so good. Pick like 2 events and 3 birthdays. I want to split the segment between a very abbreviated this day in history, and then I want to go back because there's some other stuff I want to talk about with the bombing. It's not gonna feel right to be yuck and joke back and forth, you know. Have that Jeff Landry cut ready. NOLA 3. Hmm. 806 Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP, mornings with Brian Haldane, rolling right along. Brian here with you, John LaBeouf producing. We're at 41 degrees to start our 8 o'clock hour today. Thanks again to Jim Ryan for hopping on board with the latest on the terror attack in New Orleans. And as Jim said, there's going to be a lot more coming across over the next 24 hours. We're probably going to learn a heck of a lot more. Potential cohorts, that sort of thing. Potential co-conspirators, that sort of thing. The extent of what the potential damage could have been, and the like. Coming up this hour, we're going to talk with Mayor President Sid Edwards. He's still technically Mayor President-elect Sid Edwards. He'll be on the hotline in the next segment, sworn in later on today. Also, as we talk about that NOLA attack, Paul Viollis, our resident terrorism and security expert, going to join us at 8:35. We're going to get back into a little bit more on the terror attack in just a second, but at this time every day we do This Day in History. Before we dive in, it's going to be a big year for our partners over there at 5 Star Printing and Signs. I know Danny's got some news coming up pretty soon, but in the meanwhile, 271-4096. Take a look around your business. As you start 2025, take a look around your business. You need that refresh? You need a look? Give them a call, 271-4096 or printshop5.com. All right, we're going to get back into the NOLA attack in just a second, but hit us real quick. What happened on This Day in History, John?
Well, starting off, we're going to keep it short and sweet here. Well, not so sweet. 1998, the autopsy of Chris Farley shows he overdosed on opiates and cocaine.
Wow.
That was today.
Yep.
Yeah, 1998. 2021 here, U.S. President Donald Trump says to Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have in recording released by the Washington Post.
I remember that. It was on this day in 1967, Ronald Reagan was sworn in as California's governor.
Yes, it was.
Add that to the list as well.
Yes, indeed. You want to move on to birthdays real quick?
Let's do some birthdays real quick.
All right. I got an actor here, Cuba Gooding Jr.
Oh,
Cuba
okay.
Gooding Jr., Dax Shepard here as well.
All right.
Let's see. Anybody on your end?
I got a couple over on my end. Isaac Asimov was born on this day in 1920. St. Therese of Lisieux, born on this day in 1873. Former Mets pitcher David Cone was born on this day in 1963, and former LSU linebacker Kelvin Shepard, born on this day in 1988.
All right, nice. Moving on to deaths here. Gucci himself, 1953.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. Anybody else on worth noting here?
No, I did not have. I didn't even. I apologize.
You're
just
good.
To get back, we get back into that. I didn't even look up deaths for today.
Yep. No problem at all. Just not too many notable ones, if I'm being honest here.
What national day you got?
Motivation and Inspiration Day.
Okay.
Yep.
I see. Because we're about a week and a half away from Quitter's Day, right?
Yes.
Motivation Inspiration Day is like looking to find that motivation in following your New Year's resolution, to be sure. All right, that is your abbreviated look at this day in history. We're, like I said, normal show runs from 6 to 9, but when you have news of this level, when you have a terror attack an hour down the road, it tends to trump everything else. So we're going to dive back in right here. There was a press conference yesterday with the FBI, with New Orleans' Mayor LaToya Cantrell, with NOPD Ann Kirkpatrick. Of course, Governor Jeff Landry was part of that, as was like most of Louisiana's congressional delegation as well. You heard some sound bites from John Kennedy in our news at the bottom of the hour. I not really sure why the legislative branch was there, or I understand them being there, but to me, I want to hear from those who have the active power to do something in a situation like this. And one of those folks would be Jeff Landry. He talked about, one of the things that Jeff Landry talked about was beefing up security between now and the Super Bowl. It's going to be a lot more now than waiting.
In preparation for the Super Bowl, I had intended to issue an emergency declaration tomorrow so that we could bring all of our federal, state, and local agencies to bear in preparation for the Super Bowl and Mardi Gras. But because of the events today, I have amended that emergency declaration and issued it today. So again, that declaration will allow our federal, state, and local partners to bring all of the resources necessary to get this city safe. In light of that executive order, I have also ordered the mobilization of a military police company. I've asked General Freelou to mobilize a military police company to assist both New Orleans Police and LSP and the FBI. It is important for our citizens and guests of this state to know that we are doing everything we can to secure their safety in this city.
And one of those things, one of the parts of that is, they're going to have, and side note, Rodney Mallett from DOTD is going to join us tomorrow. I had actually booked Rodney anyway to come on and talk about the updates walking up to the Super Bowl. So there's obviously a lot more on his plate this morning than there was 2 days ago. But you could take every precaution under the sun and something can still fall through the cracks. That's the nature of terrorism, is they find the soft spots. They find the weak spots. Now, when you've got a city like New Orleans, and I know that DOTD is expected to close interstate ramps around the Superdome for the Super Bowl. I was seeing Brandy Harris over at our news partners at WBRZ was tweeting this earlier. They're going to establish perimeters around the Superdome. You're going to have concrete barriers. You're going to have water-filled barriers around the Superdome itself for the Super Bowl. Should be pretty darn secure. And once you get inside that perimeter, it should be pretty darn secure. But the nature of terrorism is finding those soft spots outside of it. I fully expect Bourbon Street to be 100%, on lock as far as being a pedestrian-only venue when the Super Bowl gets here. Probably into Mardi Gras a little bit as well, as best as they can. But one of the things that I didn't want to go overlooked is that no matter what you beef up security-wise, that's the nature of what they're doing. That's the nature of what terrorists do. It's finding that one spot, that one weakness, and even if it's just some moment in time. You think about if that NOPD SUV is parked a foot further up rather than further back at the corner of Bourbon and Canal, does the truck that was driven by Din Jabbar, does he even make it around that corner? Does he even make it around that curve? There's a lot of talk about the bollards not being up. It looks like that will be corrected before the Super Bowl, or I'm guessing that will be corrected before the Super Bowl. But how effective are they going to be, and how tight do they have to be as well? There's so many little bitty things along the way. One thing I did want to get to before we hit our break, Governor Jeff Landry, in his response to this, caught a lot of hell on social media for going out to dinner last night and taking a picture. And I tweeted this out as well. Man, the governor has got so many responsibilities right now. And when it comes to the investigation by law enforcement, there's what he can and can't do. And when it comes to reaching out to the families of the deceased and the injured, that's all going to be private. But the governor also has a responsibility to this state to make sure that business remains open and we remain open for business. The governor has a responsibility to the state to say, hey, this incident, this as tragic and atrocious and horrific as it is, the incident's over. And we need to go back to being safe, or realizing that we have some level of safety in Louisiana. He's got to be front and center on that. He's got to lead it by example. So if you saw that picture of him with a group of folks that was outside of a restaurant in New Orleans last night, the thumbs up might have been a bit much. But I'm not going to nitpick to that level. Him being out there, him saying he's going to the game tonight is, to me at least, leading by example to say New Orleans did not close down. We are not closed for business ahead of a Super Bowl and Mardi Gras. Take a quick break. We got Sid Edwards coming up next. Hey, let me give you his number. Man, I don't know, Kevin. Kevin says on Facebook Live, the metal barricades not being finished and installed sounds just like Secret Service director's sloped roof excuse on the Trump attempted assassination. Total gross negligence. I don't know. Your deadline's the Super Bowl, right? Nope. Before yesterday morning, nobody said the deadline was New Year's Eve. Like, that was not on anybody's radar for any of it. And we have the benefit of hindsight now. But, man, the deadline to get everything done was the Super Bowl. But you open up so much more conversation, though, because, yeah, it's Monday morning quarterbacking is natural, and we're all going to nitpick. So if you go back to the beginning of the work that's been done in the quarter and the CBD and around Poydras, and should they have had more of a focus where the New Year's Eve celebration was going to be done there first? Easy to say that now. 818 Talk 107.3 FM WBRP mornings with Brian Haldane rolling right along. We will get back into the New Orleans attack in our next segment with terrorism expert Paul Viollis. Right now, though, it is a big day in Baton Rouge. We have Mayor President-elect Sid Edwards on with us right now. Good morning, Coach. How are you, sir?
Good morning. Happy New Year to you guys.
Happy New Year to you as well. All right, let's start with what today's going to look like for you.
Well, it's certainly going to be hectic. I'm about to head up, to the mayor's office now and to the chamber. We're going to get all our chamber in, and we're looking forward to that. And then in between some scrambling, and then at 5 o'clock, we'll invite you and anyone listening. We're going to be sworn in at the River Center Theater at 5 p.m., and we're going to follow that. There's going to be a celebration at LSU's Tiger Stadium in the Stadium Club immediately following. So I guess, as an old coach, Brian, I sort of would rather just be going to work. You know what I'm saying? Getting some stuff done. But this is a lot of people are excited. And so I'm looking forward to the day.
So the swearing in doesn't happen until 5 p.m. That puts a lot of hours between now and then. Your transition team has been hard at work up until now, but as I understand it, your transition's not done with the swearing in, correct?
That's correct. Actually, we're going to add, I think, 24 more names, and probably in the next 24 hours to that transition team. Those teams do have leaders and chairs and co-chairs, and most of them are going to meet again on January 6th. And those meetings will occur up till and maybe through the second week of March. Then, of course, there's the building of the actual team. And, you could be prepared for a release of more names probably tomorrow with that as well, because, it's like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. And at times there's a super fan blowing on it when you're doing it. But I am very excited, not only about the transition team, but about the team we're putting together administratively.
We're talking with Mayor President-elect Sid Edwards about, being sworn in today. We could drop the elect from there. We'll still call him coach, though, if that's okay. But the learning process throughout this, Coach, has been following it with, kind of a front row seat, but I'm definitely in the first couple sections. Following this process throughout and your learning process throughout has been, I'll just say, downright fun to watch. How has it been with the learning from Election Day till now? Because you said it was like drinking water from a fire hose leading up to Election Day. How has it been with the transition learning?
Exhilarating, exhausting, exciting, everything you could describe. But it's amazing the learning piece of it. Things I didn't know. Now, the blessing is, I'm surrounding myself, like I promised, with some people who have been there, people I trust and, knows everything inside and out, the government. But for me, it's just been fun. I mean, it's sort of like, going back to school, in some ways at 61 years old.
Right.
And it's mesmerizing, some things. But at the end of the day, it's still not rocket science. It's about people, first and foremost, the citizens of East Baton Rouge Parish. But when I hired football coaches, I always hired. I'd rather train skill than character, and that's how we went about our business. Now, you better hire some people that know what's going on too, right? I mean, you can't just hire, hell, he's a swell guy, or a swell lady. I mean, people got to know what they're doing. But I'm grateful. I don't know how many skills I got, but a good one I have, Brian, is I listen. I listen and I learn. So it's been a lot of fun.
The transition team has gotten quite big in size. You said 24 more names are expected. I remember when you came on the day after Election Day, I was asking you about transition team, and you said 2 is too few and 20 might be too many. We've blown right past that, haven't we?
Oh, look, it's amazing. And what happens with it, a lot of folks are excited and they want to help.
Yeah.
So if someone calls me and let's say they're an expert or really schooled up in a particular field and they want to be a part, I don't want to turn them down.
Right.
I want them to be a part. This is their parish, their city. And so I haven't turned anyone down. I haven't said, oh, no, we're full. So what you got, there's 10 or 12 levels with a chair and co-chair right now with 2 or 3 people on that committee, which is a comfortable number.
Yeah.
But we'll be adding 2 or 3 more to that committee. Like we have a North Baton Rouge transition committee. We'll have, there's a committee just on blight, simply that. And so we want people to be a part. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think we'll release any more names after these 24, because you'll be averaging 7 or 8, folks per committee now.
Right. We're talking with Mayor President-elect Sid Edwards. Getting sworn in 5:00 this evening. Let's talk about momentum and excitement. Have you been surprised by the level of excitement coming from both sides of the aisle, from different parts of Baton Rouge?
I am. I think anytime there's a change or there's something new, there's a natural excitement of, what's to come. Mm-hmm. But the term I will use is elation. And elation now transfers to me, which means pressure. And I like pressure, I really do, because there's high hopes and, for new beginnings. But it has just struck me. Well, I'll tell you this, okay? I'm a guy, I hit convenience stores and grocery stores all the time. My life's changing. But I'm going in and folks are coming up and they're like, oh my God, we can't wait. It makes me feel good, mm-hmm. but it also reminds me, of the responsibility of this office, because people are counting on myself and our team to improve Baton Rouge.
Item number one, the biggest ticket item during the campaign season and sobering reminders on both New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Item number one is going to be public safety on that front. Can you bullet point for us where your plans are headed on when it comes to public safety in Baton Rouge?
I am. We have a lot of ideas and a lot of thoughts, and it's putting them in action. Of course, I have spoken with Chief T.J. Morse on several occasions since the election, as well as Sheriff Sid Edwards. When our transition team is announced, there's going to be a person that's going to be on there that a big focus will be an umbrella on public safety. We're looking at a lot of things. I can tell you that we're going to make a crying call out to build our academies up. We are going to reach out to some retired police officers or police officers who've walked away from the job to re-recruit them back. We're gonna do a recruiting to get more officers out there. Councilman Darrell Hurst is introducing a blocks program that goes into certain neighborhoods. We haven't went all the way down the road to implement it, of course, right. But basically that would involve captains or block leaders that live in neighborhoods mm-hmm. that will answer to that councilman. The councilman then would keep me abreast of what's going on, as well as law enforcement. I'll plan on reaching out, which I have already, to the governor's office for some help, as well. And what that's all about, I've said it all the time, isn't just go arrest every Timmy on the corner, but I've said it along, we're shorthanded. We're shorthanded. We also, some of the programs that were discontinued in the BRPD, mm-hmm. We're looking at bringing back, specialized units, to help out, and just kind of sitting with the sheriff and the chief and asking him, what do y'all need? From the mayor's office, tell me what's the greatest needs. I've already gotten the answer from both of them, and it's boots on the ground,
right.
But there's the education piece. Early childhood education and tying everything into that. And with Mr. Lamont Cole, our superintendent, working with him. So it's comprehensive, but we've already laid some pieces out that we're now going to try to put together.
He is Coach Sid Edwards, Mayor President-elect, for another couple of hours. Will be sworn in at 5 p.m. today. I appreciate you carving out a couple minutes for us this morning. We'll talk to you soon.
God bless y'all. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You too. Absolutely. It's going to be a busy couple days for him. We're going to have him on regularly, by the way. I know Mayor President Broom did a good job of making herself available on a regular basis. So will Sid Edwards, to be sure. Hey, don't forget about the folks over at Matherns. You can find them downtown on 3rd Street. You can find them in the Nicholson Gateway Shopping Center. As Mardi Gras approaches, look, I love telling you about the LSU location, right? But as Mardi Gras approaches, if you're downtown for Orion, if you're downtown for any of the Spanish Town, any of the parades, they've got you covered. I mean, if you're doing a little pre-parade tailgating, swing on by Matherns. Grab whatever it was you forgot to bring. Didn't load it up enough beer, Matherns has got you covered. Didn't load up on snacks? Mathern's has got you covered. They're downtown on 3rd Street. You can find them there. Of course, they've got the Nicholson Gateway location across the street from Tiger Stadium as well. But when it comes to your Mardi Gras headquarters, it's Mathern's downtown. 8:30, here comes ABC News. Kevin says Monday morning quarterbacking for sure, but why wouldn't you make New Year's deadline instead of Super Bowl? But they've done New Year's every year. But see, the hard part here, Kevin, is you make a damn good point. Like it's hard to refute your point, but at the same time, though, I put myself in their shoes. And I don't know that I would have done it differently. ISIS despised our New Year's celebration. Remember, barricades were actually installed in 2017 to prevent terrorist attacks. Probably should have left up and replaced zone by zone. It defeats the whole purpose of security against terror. The problem the New Year's celebration is also Jackson Square. And then everybody goes over to Bourbon Street, right? Isn't that where the ball drops in New Orleans with the King Cake Baby? Can you grab LRN 14? I think that's the cut they just used. LRN. What? That doesn't. There's Paul. No, it doesn't. I've got it right here. The hell date is this? Okay, let's make sure you have the right cuts for the segment after, Paul. Yeah. Let's hear it in cue. Okay, we're good. Okay. There's, yeah, it goes all the way through at least 19. We are looking at sunny skies today. Should get up to around 66 degrees, down to 52 overnight tonight. Tomorrow we'll top out at 68 and then down to 46. Saturday, Sunday, Monday is when it starts to get a little bit, well, it'll continue to warm up Saturday and Sunday. We got highs of 61 on Saturday and 77 on Sunday. But we've got thunderstorms rolling through on Sunday that's going to really, really cool things off. Looking ahead to Monday, your high on Monday just gets up to 46 degrees. Overnight low Monday night into Tuesday, 28. And that's not the only night we're going to freeze, because on Tuesday night it gets down to 29. Wednesday, 31 is the overnight low into Thursday morning. Right now, though, we're sunny and 44 in downtown Baton Rouge. .838 Talk 107.3 FM WBRP. Mornings with Brian Haldane rolling right along. The terror attack on New Orleans has been our lead topic all morning long. 15 dead, 35 injured, including 2 NOPD officers who took down the suspect who was behind the wheel of the truck, but not the only suspect involved. There's more out there. Joining us now to talk about this, whenever we talk about terrorism, we turn to our expert on security and terrorism. That would be Paul Viollis. He's on with us now. Paul, how are you, sir?
Hey, good morning, Brian.
Good morning. Glad to be able to have some access to you this morning, because this is one where it's not just terror, but terror striking in our own backyard, just an hour up the road from us. What were your immediate takeaways from the way things have been, I don't want to say reported and handled, but how, as the information has come out, how are you digesting it?
Well, I will tell you, Brian, the first word that comes to mind is sloppy. And inconsiderate for the general public's feelings. You start throwing words out that create fear inside our American public, and that's just really unacceptable. And the manner in which the fact that this was not only reported but handled on the ground has been confusing to me, and I'll give you several examples of that. Our citizens, your listeners, listen, and they're very patient for the most part, but depending on what they hear to be actually true. But when you hear conflicting stories all day long yesterday, you leave people with greater stress and anxiety, Brian, than they did when they first heard of the attack. And that, in and of itself, is dangerous. That's an answer to that question. I will tell you that my first responses here, the first thing that came to mind is the fact that we have once again in our country stuck our head in the sand. We have failed to protect the American people from something as basic as an outside perimeter for an event that was taking place in public. There is absolutely no reason, Brian, I say this as God is my judge, there is absolutely no reason why that vehicle should ever have gained access to that location, ever, under any circumstances. The bottom line is that security was breached because it didn't exist. It basically allowed someone to use a vehicle as a weapon of mass destruction after what we've been through since 9/11. How could you not say this was not foreseeable? So that is first and foremost the thing that's on the table right now, is that this should have been foreseeable and it should have been prevented. It should never have happened.
This is, I mean, I want to say the intersection was blocked off, but I can't because he got around it. There was an NOPD vehicle that was at the corner of Bourbon and Canal that he was able to squeeze through and whip around. What level of blockage would you have?
Well, whenever you have an event, and I think that's really the most poignant thing, right? And I love the way that you phrase that, Brian, because it's important for everyone to get a visual of this. Mm-hmm. When you think back to the lessons we should have learned since 9/11, we understand, not just in our country, but globally. Brian, just go back to last year in the Midwest around Christmas time when that guy drove a car and killed a bunch of people at a Christmas parade.
Yeah.
You know, we keep seeing the same thing. In answer to your question, there's a device that, and all of your listeners have seen them on the highways, you've seen them in streets. They're called Jersey barriers. They are solid poured concrete barriers about 3 feet high, about 10 feet long. And they will prevent a vehicle from being used as a weapon of mass destruction, which was done in this case. The manner in which they are placed, you can't carry them, Brian. These things are brought in by truck. They're expensive. There's no question about that. But you put them in and block all access so vehicles can't get in. If a vehicle can get past you, then it is not properly protected from the perimeter. End of story. That's all there is to it. It's done all the time. So the fact that a vehicle got in, clearly unacceptable.
We're talking with security and terrorism expert Paul Viollis about what went down in New Orleans on New Year's morning, 3:15 a.m. Paul, I can't help but wonder how much worse this would have been had it happened just 2 hours prior, because by 3:15, a lot of folks had gone back to the hotel, gone back to their cars, returned home. But, I mean, you know, the closer you get to the ball dropping, the more dense the crowd would have been.
There's no question about that. I mean, listen, when you think about it, Brian, you and I sit down here, we're a couple of family guys, you know. Mm-hmm. Think of the people that left to go there and didn't come home. Think of the families that are adversely affected and the pain that's being sent out there right now. By the luck of the draw, was this not at a different time that would have caused far greater injury and far greater devastation? But the bottom line is that, you know, this clearly, as we investigate this guy more and we look at the telltale signs and we look at the fact of all the things we now know that we should have known before this happened, if I'm a family member, I'm asking a lot of questions and I'm as angry as the day is long at this point.
So there's the incident, as horrific as it was, with the truck getting around NOPD and onto Bourbon Street. That is horrific. When you broaden things out, we can stop talking about this man and talk about these people. 2 improvised explosive devices were found further up Bourbon Street. There were reports of other devices being detonated in a couple of other locales. How comfortable are you broadening this out to say that when the FBI is looking for accomplices, they're going to find some?
I won't say that I'm certain, but I will tell you, Brian, after 44 years of government service and having served in an anti-terrorism unit, I will tell you without any question, unequivocally, I would say that absent me just having pure fact in front of me, I would say I'm 100% certain that they're going to find several accomplices in this case. There's no question in my mind. One of the things that's very telltale also, you know, are distractions. There were a couple of fires that were set just prior to this, obviously a distraction or a diversion away from the incident. There are IEDs that were detonated subsequent to that. So, again, we're early. We're in the embryonic stage of this investigation. We're not going to really move into the prosecutorial side on the driver. We will for others. I am more than confident that they're going to find 3 to 4 other accomplices relative to this. They're going to find that this individual went back and forth over the southern border, probably Eagles Pass from what I would gather based on what I've seen, rents the truck in Texas, plans to sell thoroughly, and something you and I have talked about before, Brian, when we dig down into social media, we're going to see that this guy was recruiting, training, and communicating and planning over social media And that's something we should have been watching.
Yes, absolutely. We're talking with Paul Viollis kind of for a couple more minutes talking about the terror attack in New Orleans. Paul, one of the problems that I have with focusing on New Year's Eve, the New Year's Eve in New Orleans happens every single year, but it kind of fell to the wayside this year because we're about to be on an even bigger stage in a little over a month with the Super Bowl coming to town.
Right.
Was
exactly.
New Orleans a target as a precursor to the Super Bowl?
I would say that New Orleans is a magnanimous target. It's a global city.
Mm-hmm.
It gains street credential for any would-be terrorist or ISIS follower. It's a home run for somebody who wants to get on the global stage and stay there for a good week or so, which is exactly what's happening right now. This is a win on the side of Islamic radicalists. And having worked this for years, I can tell you that they're celebrating right now. This is a win for them. So New Orleans is a prime target. Not only do you have Super Bowl coming up, but what about Mardi Gras? What about Jazz Fest?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, think about those, Brian, right? Think about that. So, yes, as far as New Orleans goes, New Orleans is a prime target. And my question is going to be, when this is investigated, I'm interested to see whether the mayor's office and city management either pulled back on a request from the police department for, perimeter security like Jersey barriers and extra staff and didn't allow it, or whether they allow it and the police never asked for it. I'm really going to want to know what happened there, as I'm sure the families are going to want to know as well. That's going to be key here in that investigation.
Well, the metal bollards coming out of the ground would be the key thing here. They were in the process of being replaced, with the Super Bowl being the finish line, with the Super Bowl being the deadline for that, as opposed to it being New Year's Eve for the deadline for that. That's been a good chunk of the conversation. While I've got you with a perspective that's a little bit broader than just out of New Orleans, I've got to bring this Las Vegas incident into the picture as well. Are we going to find further connections beyond just a few similarities between Vegas and New Orleans?
What I was told from my intelligence sources and assets earlier this morning, about 3 o'clock, is that there appears to be, it's not confirmed, but there appears to be a nexus between both individuals having served together. Now, this is absent showing a solid line, not just a dotted, but a solid line that they had been in touch and had communicated. But there does appear to be somewhat of a nexus between the two individuals. Whether or not that's a solid line has yet to be confirmed. But I will say, when you look at that vehicle being used as a weapon of mass destruction parked right in front of Trump's hotel, the fact that it was even able to stop there is a breach of security. Again, going back to the genesis of our conversation, Brian, once again, we're sticking our heads in the sand. We're allowing something that should never happen. And to switch gears real quickly, Brian, and I'm sure that you've seen this, the guy arrested in Northern Virginia with over 150 pipe bombs. I mean, this is weeks before the inauguration, and when they searched his freezer, they found HMTD. And for those of you that don't know what that is, it's an explosive material that's so unstable, it can be exploded merely as a result of friction of temperature change. These three things all in close proximity to each other. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we need to do a much better job at examining exactly what's going on U.S. soil and do a much better job protecting people.
He is a terrorism expert, security expert, Paul Viollis. You can check him out at viollis.com. Paul, we always appreciate the time, sir.
Yes, sir, Brian. Enjoy your day.
You do the same. I'll do my level best after that, but he brings up good points. And look, I'm not the Monday morning quarterback guy, but he has that security background. And believe it or not, a lot of what Paul just said echoed a lot of the sentiments throughout our Facebook chat this morning. Is why wasn't New Year's Eve the deadline as opposed to the Super Bowl? It's a question that's very naturally going to be asked on this morning. Why isn't Bourbon Street a pedestrian mall only? Well, let's talk about that next, actually. Right now, we're going to get you to your money now. It's 8:50. Oh. Oh, thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that. All right, I don't know enough about Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas to know, like, one of the things Paul said was that Cybertruck should have never gotten up that driveway. What's the point of a driveway if not to drive up it? Like, should safety be to that level of paranoia to where we just don't function anymore? I don't know what to, like, Bourbon Street is a street. It's hard to make the argument a day and a half, a day and 5 hours after this happens. It's hard to make the argument that says, no, we don't need to be overly cautious. But the reason they've held off from making Bourbon Street a pedestrian mall in the past is that it is, in fact, a street. And it's damn near impossible to restock the liquor if you got to walk it around a corner, you know? Ooh. Oh. Hey, Happy New Year. Ooh. Hey, who was listening when Jim Ryan from ABC was on? $1,000 he's staying at the Royal Sonesta. No, the way he described, he said it came up 3 blocks to right outside my hotel.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get into it with him. Like, hey, Jim, I don't know what you tell everybody where you're staying, but he's at the Royal Sonesta. But, man, you think about it. Like, the end of that block is the famous door. And once you get to the famous door, you've got all the popular bars. Do I have a full minute here? I can hold it. I gotta pee so bad.
Got about 30 to 45 seconds.
856 Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP, Mornings with Brian Haldane, rolling right along. Sloppy. That was the word for it from Paul Viollis, our terrorism expert, as he described the response to the terror attack in New Orleans yesterday. It's always different to get a national perspective on a local story, or when a local story goes national, because when you know the players involved, when you know the setting intimately, it does change things a good bit. I mean, and there's certain things that we all know. Bourbon Street, right? We all know Bourbon Street from that 100 block till you get up to Iberville. All right, only thing there really is that Crystal Burger. All right, then you go another block or two, you start to add some bars into the mix. From what Jim Ryan from ABC News told us earlier today, this Din Jabbar got all the way up to Conti, or almost. So once you get there, you're talking about you got the Royal Sonesta on one side and the Famous Door on the other. And once you get past the Famous Door, it's on. That's when the crowd in the street gets really, really thick. That's when you've got a ridiculous mass of people out there. So I don't know, like, I haven't been down to Bourbon in a while. Last summer, but like I was there in the daytime. So I don't know. I'm not remembering how far up Bourbon bollards are out and where they were still out of place. I mean, obviously all the way back by Canal where you had the NOPD vehicle, they weren't there. But man, if he had gotten past Conti, if he got up to like St. Louis or up by like Razoo or Cat's Meow, can you imagine how much like it actually would have been worse than it was? So it begs the question, why not make Bourbon Street just a 100% pedestrian mall? You heard this in our news at the bottom of the hour. J.P. Morrell, councilman from New Orleans, says that conversation is going to be taking place very soon.
There was a lot of pushback at the time for that. A lot of businesses were very concerned about it. We've always known that Bourbon Street is a soft target. Substantial things are going to have to change with the way we deal with the French Quarter.
100%. 100%. Just how substantial? How do you work that out? Bourbon Street is a full-on street, right? And all those restaurants, bars, hotels, and the like, I mean, they all have to be served from deliveries and whatnot. That gets a lot more difficult when it's a pedestrian mall at that point, especially when you're talking about like 8-9 blocks. I mean, I don't think he's talking about going all the way up to Jean Lafitte's blacksmith shop, right? But at least to St. Anne, which is a good 8 blocks. Morrell says whatever security measures had been in place, that it's been ineffective thus far.
There's going to have to, after all this is said and done, be a conversation on what steps were taken to make sure Bourbon Street was not easily accessible to vehicles. And obviously, based upon what we saw, there weren't enough steps to make sure that Bourbon Street was not easily accessible to vehicles.
Now, no matter what conversation takes place, there's not enough time until the Super Bowl to implement all of it. But you would have to talk about knocking out cross streets and the like. Look, the conversation will pick back up tomorrow. We're out of here. Moon's next. All right, Facebook, I got to get out because I got to pee. We'll see y'all tomorrow.